Hello everyone and welcome back to my Unity development log series for Colonise. I did mention there may be a bit of a break in content last week as I'm due to go on holiday. However, I've managed to record enough videos and get them scheduled to upload so that there should be regular videos coming to the channel still. This week we'll be going over a game design document which I started to write, some improved map generation and where we're laying out things in the hexagonal grid, improved movement and distance calculations, and as you've probably noticed, I've added some fog of war into the game. So to begin with, I was a bit unsure at the end of last week's video of where to proceed with Colonise, so I thought it might be a good idea to get a game design document together, which you can see now here. I'm not going to go through it in full, but I think it was quite handy. I wrote myself up an overview of the core features I wanted within the game, and the sort of direction that I could go in moving forward. Having a good game design document is pretty key to development of any game, whether it's indie or otherwise, and it can definitely help keep you motivated and on track, especially if you're working in solo development. One of the things I also noticed through writing this is some of the common features that are going to be reused throughout the game, such as the ships having different ranges of enemies they could attack, for example, into an adjacent enemy or an enemy up to 3 hexes away, along with different movement speeds. So they'll have to check not just adjacent hexes, but hexes that are up to 2, 3, or X amount of hexes away. So this gave me something to focus on for the beginning of this week's development. I also sketched up some objectives that the player could advance through to unlock different things or just progress through the game, especially in a tutorial setting. This could help new players to understand how they're meant to really play the game. And some upgrades. I decided that Colonise, unlike most other strategy games, is going to have a rarity loot type system, somewhat similar to Battle Royale games or RPGs such as World of Warcraft or Borderlands. I wanted them to have a rarity in colour, that's something easily recognisable, the white, green, blue, purple, orange system, and they'll get more powerful, and these will drop from enemy pirate ships as the game goes on. Getting into a bit of code now, I changed the find adjacent function, which should probably be renamed to be honest, as it's no longer adjacent. It now takes in a distance that we want to check from a central position, and finds all hexes within that distance away from the hex we're checking. So if the ship can move 2 hexes, then it will now show all hexes within a range of 2 from that ship. It's doing a very similar thing, just adding each adjacent position, and then it goes around each of those positions until the distance is satisfied and adds new ones, getting rid of any duplicates by making them distinct. What this means is that when we create a ship and we select it, now instead of just showing the hexes and having to click hexes around the ship and having to click once to move to an adjacent hex and then once again to move to a further hex, providing it has 2 moves, we'll just be able to go straight to one of the outer hexes. We can still move individually if we wish, but it's not necessary anymore, which is a very nice addition to have. As you probably noticed in the previous clip, when the ships move, these darker areas of the maps get cleared away. This is known as fog of war. It's a common feature in many strategy games to disguise what the player has not yet discovered. So I'll just demonstrate it once again. If this ship moves, once it stops, the fog around it clears within a 2 hex radius. Now, this vision is set in the selectable component of any selectable item in the game, so a planet that is owned or a ship that is owned by the player. Also, it will be for enemy ships, however, they won't be able to clear it away, they'll just set their own vision boolean so that we can identify what the player can see and what the pirates can see. How this is done: each hex instantiates a fog prefab, which is dragged and dropped in through the editor. It's just the fog model with this fog script attached. And when a ship finishes moving, it checks for fog, which is done in the selectable component here. The fog check is using this find adjacent that we just generated in the grid manager, and it's checking by the vision of the ship, which, as I mentioned earlier, is individually set for each game object. Then in the fog script, if it is within range, then we set its discovered to true, we disable it, and we make sure that any ship that is on that tile is now visible. This is nice as it is, However, there are some issues, or not issues, but as you can see here, there are some hexes which are not completely greyed out, but somewhat greyed out, and that's because there is no longer anything by the player in range of them. The way I've done this is at the end of every turn, we're going to check what is around the objects owned by the player and half grey out the ones that are not. This will mean that any ships that move into them, so potential enemy ships, won't be able to be seen, and back in the code, this end of turn fog check is done for every object. They're all initially set, and then only unset again if they are in range of a ship or a planet. And when I say they're initially set, I mean they're reset so that they have the no vision attribute in their colour, and anything that is under them, any ships or anything, is not enabled. One last thing I want to cover this week is the map generation itself. So rather than have everything randomly placed, I wanted to assign different planets such as pirate bases and resource planets in different rings around the map. So I've separated each map by size, and it will have a number of rings in which we can place a different type of planet in each ring before the empty planets, which will be randomly decided where they go. So for example here, the small map, which is the one I'll be working with for probably the remainder of these devlogs for the most part, has one pirate base, 5 rings, and each ring is 3 hexes wide. It will have 4 planets, 1 in each of the rings for each of the resource planets, metal and energy, and then 1 other randomly placed. And just going into code now, you can see this is set by an enumerable, which we can set in the Unity editor or by map creation code once menus are implemented, and it's just setting up all these different attributes. Then a bit further down we assign the zones. I've created a simple loop to say if the hex is within a certain border, set its zone to I, where I is part of this loop. And then when it comes to generating the planets, so for example here, pirate bases, once the code is there, will spawn a pirate base in not the outer zone, but one in from the outer zone. The metal and energy planets will be 1 in each zone, and then 1 in a random zone. And the empty planets just go completely randomly across the map. And this results in quite a nice degree of not just randomization, but it also guarantees you also have some of these metal and energy filled planets near your spawn, and there will be some randomly further out. The pirate bases won't be too close to the player at the start of the game, however they will start to explore closer once the ships are being spawned, and I think this is probably the way I'm going to keep it going forward. That's all for this week, folks. If you enjoyed the video, please do like, share, subscribe, and comment below any thoughts you have. Any support is appreciated. I also started a Twitter account, at DarthJarJar on the Twitter. I'll post a link in the description, so please follow me and get in touch if you have any questions or comments. Next week, we'll be looking at a pirate controller class, which will allow pirates to take a turn in the game. That could mean things such as bases spawning new ships or ships moving around on the map. It'll probably be very simple at the start and not a proper implementation of AI, but we'll get into that next week. Thanks for watching.